Yo, 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 yo. Welcome to another installment of The After Party, brought to you by the Extraordinary Negroes. My name is Alexander Hardy, and we are gathered here today to talk about Spike Lee's new Netflix series that's got mofos all worked up. She's Gotta Have It, which just premiered on Thanksgiving Day. So the series, if you haven't watched, follows the doings and screwings of the Brooklyn-based artist Nola Darling and her tribulations as a self-proclaimed sex-positive, polyamorous, pansexual, judging a quartet of lovers in the age of gentrified, infestation, and rising rent. And basically, as I said, everyone has a lot to say about this show, so we wanted to bring folks to the table to dive the hell in. So, to help me unpack this show and the reactions to it, I'm joined by our lovely contributor and editor-in-chief of the extraordinarynegroes.com, writer, mother, full-time Nubian earth goddess, queen, lady, woman, and count extraordinaire, Synitta Walker. And also joined by my literary sister, a fellow Very Smart Brothas contributor whose work you can find on The Roots, The Washington Post, Teen Vogue, Ebony, and The Cut, Mrs. Shamira Ibrahim. Hey.
Hey.
How's everyone doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm drinking Jack Daniels, so I'm okay.
Hey. I need to get like you. That definitely would make these technical difficulties a little bit easier to bear. So let's just, dive in. I assume you've both seen, first of all, let me ask, have you both seen the 1986 original?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for those who have not, it was Spike's first feature-length film, and it starred Tracy Camilla Johns as Nola Darling. My first question to you ladies tonight is, how much did you connect with the Nola Darling in the original, if at all?
You want me to go first, Shamira?
Yeah, go ahead.
When it came out, I was 7, and my mom is not a fan of Spike Lee at all. She hates him. So I had to sneak and watch it a couple of years after it came out, and I thought the main character was amazing. Like, she did whatever she wanted to do, and it resonated with me because I like to do what I want to do. I don't like rules, and if there are rules, I like them to be mine. So This character kind of gave me a different perspective than what I was raised to be. And it kind of opened my eyes to a life I could possibly live. So She resonated with me a lot.
Yeah. For me, I didn't watch it until I was an adult. I kind of went through this like crash course of like Black American cinema in college when all my college friends were like, what do you mean you've never watched Harlem Nights? And I was like, my mom is East African. All we had was Barbara Streisand movies. So, like, I kind of got trapped in a room that was like made to watch like The Wiz and a crash course of like all of the 80s that just was not in my house, because if it wasn't Light FM or public access television, it was not in my house. And so it didn't necessarily resonate for me like that. Like, there were some things that I liked and I could appreciate it as an initial effort, but there were a lot of things that were ham-fisted for me. But I've come to realize later that I've just never really liked Spike as a writer. I've always appreciated Spike when he is like crafting someone else's already written narrative. So that's just generally how I feel about him. And I'm sure we'll get to it as we talk about the series.
Oh, yeah.
So I appreciated it, but like the way that the narratives were constructed weren't for me in the first place.
Okay, that's fair. Let's see. I saw it for the first time in less than 5 years ago. Like, it's been very recent. And I was definitely, full grown adult, lots of whole shit happening. So like, it was, it didn't strike me in that revolutionary time of life when, seeing this kind of love story would have been transformative in a way. But with this show, of course, as you know, they're revisiting Nola's character 30 years later, in a time when women being confident and free in their sexuality, rather than sex happening to her or on a man's terms, is something that we see on screen a lot more, but it is still a bit difficult for many men folk to grasp. So, being today's breasted guests, how do you feel the show represented the sexuality of the self-proclaimed sex-positive, polyamorous pansexual who happens to hate labels? Because you're 20-something, right, Shamira? I'm an old man, but
I'm 31. But so I mean, first of all, my general sentiment was fuck this show, just to be clear. But like, I got what it was trying to get at. It just felt inauthentic in what it was doing because Spike Lee is like 60. And so a lot of the themes that I feel like he thought he was trying to draw out in writing about things kind of felt like him overhearing like 20-somethings talk at Havana Outpost in Fort Greene and creating a narrative out of it. Because the reality is, like, in the 80s, this may have been revolutionary, but in 2017, a Black woman in Fort Greene having sex with 3 men is just dating. Like, it's just not that sensational. And so it insists on sensationalizing a thing that just would not be a thing. Like, she would not sit at brunch while her friends are scandalized by the fact that she is having sex with 3 people or 4 people. Sorry. I forget that she went a dick cleanse and kind of dove into the pussy, but
we'll get to that too.
But it just, the way that they insist on labeling things, but not labeling things in ways that don't make sense. Like, I have several friends in poly relationships or poly situations, and they were all kind of like, what the fuck is this? Like, you don't date a married man whose partner does not approve of the situation and then call this a polyamorous situation. It is what it is. I don't participate in that lifestyle, so I don't want to speak definitively. But I think more so, Spike clearly just did not realize that the level of sensationalism that it may have driven in the 80s doesn't carry over to now. And so it kind of just felt like a lot of pedanticism for the sake of it, where it's like, I'm going to insert these words that I know we're talking about now and bring it to currency, but not realize that means that the concept of it needs to be adapted to.
Word. Whew.
I think it's interesting that this is a popular perspective I'm seeing on the internet. However, I think it's based from certain people's corner of the universe and from their bubble, because Nola, darling, is me. That was who I was in my 20s. That's probably who I would be right this very instant if I didn't have a kid and I wasn't trying to get a divorce. Like, I've seen so many tweets and posts about, this is stupid. There isn't any woman who acts like this. There's no polyamorous people like this. This is garbage. I've read articles from like writers I respect. And my first instance is that I want to ask is, are you even polyamorous? So I feel like I'm the only person that really liked this show other than one of my other friends. And I'm a little older than both of you guys. So the perspective that's mentioned, I hear people keep saying, Spike doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's doing. And there were several women writers on this, and several of the producers were women too. So it's like that part's conveniently left out because I think it's easy to blame him, because it's like everybody wants something that represents them. And when it doesn't, it turns into Nola's confused and anyone who's like her is confused and nobody acts like this. And that's not true. There are people out there who act like that. And I can attest to it, because no matter how awful she was described by some people, some of these instances, I lived these things. Like, this isn't anything to be proud of, but I did fuck with a married dude. And for years, while I was polyamorous. And it's like, well, polyamorous people don't do that. Yes, the fuck they do. Like, it's like, people are different. And I think you have to be kind of go into it, watching it, expecting to see something that you're not accustomed to. And demographically, it changes too, because I grew up in California, but then I lived in Atlanta for 16 years. And people do things different. You go to different pockets of the United States. So what you see in New York, you may not see that in the Bay Area. What you see in the Bay Area, you're not going to see it in Southern California. It's like, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's why I'm glad we're talking about this, so that we can stop acting like sexuality and life itself is one big pillar that has to represent the group that represents us individually.
You raise a really good point that some of my reservations were kind of rooted in that same, like, everybody knows that. Or like, who acts like that? But yeah, I mean, I know that I grew up a lot faster than a lot of people did. And I know a lot of, I've heard, like you said, women who maybe didn't have that like big city, fast upbringing or fast maturation in their 20s. So I guess people do mature and hoe and grow at different speeds, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think, I didn't want to harp on the poly point because, again, I'm not, so I don't want to speak for it. I do know I have friends who are poly who said as much, but by no means is that like my axe to grind, because it's not my axe in the first place. But I think that for me, I do know there were women who contributed to the writing of it, but I remember looking over the cast and it was like there was nobody who wrote it who was under the age of 40, I believe. And that doesn't by any means mean that people who are older cannot write dialogue for younger people. But it just, for me, made it so that a lot of the dialogue around sexuality and how people, especially in Brooklyn where I live, how they would interact with that just felt very stilted and inauthentic. But I do realize that I am also speaking for the community that I go to, where I go to First Saturdays and see all the unapologetic Blackness at everyday people and see the kind of people that are supposed to be mimicked in this show. And so that's why when I watch it, I'm like, this just feels stilted and uneven for me, as opposed to like anything else. So it just feels like it's sensationalizing what I feel like shouldn't be over dramatized.
Right. And you also bring another good point. I guess, one of the things that stuck out to me was the end of the first episode. My name is Nola Darling, peace, two fingers, Black Lives Matter. Like, that is one of those instances where kind of that attempt to capture some of that felt a little bit stilted, maybe a little bit unrealistic to me. And so that was maybe some of those elements about the show that were like a little heavy-handed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. There are a lot of moments like that for me in the show where I was like, I get what they're trying to do, but I don't understand why this is happening. Like moments about specific points of dialogue that I understood, like natural hair discussions or, body image discussions, all valid discussion points to have. But they just felt so inserted in a way that I'm like, I don't know who talks like this in my kind of millennial age group. Now, it doesn't mean that the discussions themselves aren't valid, but it just wasn't an artistic direction I personally appreciated.
It's kind of weird, though, like hearing these things sometimes. And I guess I do pay attention to the age groups in my social networking. And I hear these things from the 20-somethings and the younger 30-somethings, the stuff that's being tweeted, the stuff that's being posted on Facebook, any captions related to Instagram. And it almost makes me feel like I'm in a twilight zone because these things are familiar. And it's like, am I the only one hearing this or seeing this or reading these things? I mean, I have younger friends that are a hell of a lot younger than me. Some are 10 years younger than me. And some of the things that they're mentioning, they talk about amongst themselves and amongst our group of friends is very similar to this. So when I hear people say it's not familiar, I think it's just maybe that's their group of people. Like, what do you guys talk about? What is your focus? Like, what is it centered on? Because when I follow a lot of women who are feminists, and these are some of the things that they are discussing, some of the things they're talking about. And I also find some of these things are discussed offline because they don't want to attract attention from maybe relatives and friends that they've grown up with who have totally different perspectives of it. So I'm actually interested in seeing people talk about the honest things that they talk about outside of their social networks, did they not like some of these things because they're mirrors, you know?
Real. Touching on something that you just mentioned, that we mentioned, I guess, before this, throughout the series, we saw her answer the phone while in bed with a lot. I've answered the phone in bed while being out. We saw her dodge everyone at her art project debut at the gallery, and generally struggled to be a polyamorous person who's attempting to date for monogamy-hungry folks. So, Sin, as our resident poly expert, at least for the sake of this conversation, I know communication is the basis of a lot of successful relationships, but like, what does a healthy multi-partner? What could a healthy multi-partner situation look like?
One where everyone's honest. And I know that sounds so simple, but I don't think either of you would be surprised at how much people lie in their relationships, mainly to spare other people's feelings. And also because they're afraid of how people are going to react. Whereas if you go into it, hey, this is who I am. I don't really fuck with monogamy. If you want to fuck with me, this is what I do. It's kind of like you don't give people an opportunity to lie, because it's like, what's the point of lying at this point? Like, if someone's lying at that point, they have a problem. So for me, it has been a lot of guys, they don't like it to be open on both ends. They want the woman to be monogamous, but they want to live polyamorously.
So are you saying it's more, see a lot of the NOLA? A lot of men want to be in the NOLA position of like, she sets the rules, her terms, don't call, call before you come, they want to be in the driver's seat, essentially. Is that?
Oh, most definitely. They want that freedom to come and go as they please, do whatever they want, but they don't necessarily want you to have that freedom. Like, and this isn't something that I've just adopted because it's new agey. There's tons of trends going on right now, but I've been like this since I was in high school. I graduated from high school like 21 years ago. And the guys that were interested in dating me, I was just like, yeah, sure, you could be my boyfriend, but we're young. And I think this is a time of exploring. So you do whatever you want to do and I'll do whatever I want to do. And it sounds great at first, right? And then they see you out with someone and then it's like, no, we can't do this. So I've experienced this in pretty much all of my relationships, even my marriage. At one time it was, and then when the reality hit that, wait a minute, she's going to be doing the same things with men and women that I do with women. No, this is not going to work. So I get that a lot of guys like the idea of NOLA. They love that she represents all this freedom. She's down for the cause, whatever it is. She's free. She's, I call you at 3 a.m, I can come through. And she's not trying to turn this into anything clingy. I can leave when I want. But at the same time, it's like there's boundaries that are still set, even though you have a polyamorous relationship. So even with the Jamie and Greer and Mars, because she was the polyamorous one, things were on her terms. And a lot of people looked at that as her being immature and confused. Like she didn't really know what she wanted. And it's like, no, yes, she did. She wanted to date 3 guys at one time. And people understand that when guys do it, but when women do it, it's like, oh, she's trying to find herself. And that was the part that I'm glad it came to the recent She's Gotta Have It. It was translated because that was shown in the original one too, where it was just like, she's not doing anything different than what guys typically do, but she has to be confused. Like, that still doesn't make sense to me.
I get what you're saying. So on that same topic, another thing that I've seen, and I saw Shamira's tweets about this, in terms of dealing with her multiple lovers, and the Thanksgiving episode that featured, everyone all came to dinner, all ready to get it in. And if you, my question is, we're inviting 3 of your dick donors to a holiday dinner, would you serve...
You say dick donors?
Yes. Would you serve sweet potato pie or banana pudding and wine? And would there be a dick donor dinner?
Is this to Shamira or me?
Whomever.
Oh my God.
I just saw your tweets about the 3-headed monster. I'm just wondering how you would navigate that same situation.
So first, I'll answer it. So, I mean, I've dated multiple people at once. Don't know if I would invite them all to dinner, but conceptually, I should give full disclosure. I am not a savory pie person. So in the sweet potato pie versus pumpkin pie debate, I'm a team neither.
Okay, that's fine.
So I would probably serve, I don't know. Let's say banana pudding. Actually, no, that's probably a bad idea. Bread pudding. I'll do bread pudding.
Okay.
I'm a carrot cake type of person. I love cream cheese icing. So no pie at all for me. And just no pie.
Would there have been a dick donor dinner? Like, how do you handle that? Is that something that is normal to bring all your, like Shamira, would either of you bring all your hoes to the yard for, a reckoning?
No, I would not. I'll be like, I was really confused by the scene, not so much because she did it. I'm sure there are circumstances in which you would want to bring everyone in and lay out all the terms. More so that she didn't tell anyone she was doing it. It was like, surprise, we're having a dick collective. Like, I was just, and then the painting, I was like, I mean, okay, girl, like, I guess. But, and because also she called it like the 3-headed monster, and I was like, I'm not high enough for this at all. But so it wouldn't be my cup of tea. Like, I fully understand being like, I'm non-monogamous, I'm dating other people, but I don't, unless you have like a principal partner that you need to disclose exactly who your partners are, I didn't understand the need for that. But again, it's not my lifestyle, so I don't want to pretend I know all the rules.
So, I've actually been in a situation similar to this. It wasn't one I orchestrated. I happened to be somewhere, and 4 guys I was dealing with ended up being at the same place.
Yes.
And it wasn't spread out like the art gallery. We were all in a house. And one of the guys that was there, he's incredibly loud and arrogant and had this ego that was out of the world. So he's one of those types of people. He wants people to know that you guys are together. So I stayed as far away from him as possible because I didn't want him ruining anything else. And the thing is, I'm not being sneaky or anything. It was just, I'm very discreet in my dealings with people because men or women, people get jealous. I have yet to date someone whose jealousy level was where mine is, which I'm not really that jealous of a person. I don't like when people go out of their way to make me jealous. That pisses me off. But as far as being polyamorous, I accept other people are going to find the people I'm attracted to attractive. So I stayed away from him because he's loud and does too much. But the other 3 guys, their demeanor was a little more reserved. So this is when I learned sexual energy speaks for itself. You cannot hide that. So when you're in close proximity to someone that you're having sex with, other people see and feel that. They may not know what it is, but they can see those looks. They can see slight brushing of the bodies. And I was like, never again I'm going to leave if I see it, because it is something you cannot control. I wasn't in control of the situation at all. I had to stay in a room away from all 4 of them.
Do like a Nola, basically, and avoid everybody.
Yeah. Yes. Very much so.
What about in terms of openness, as far as the way, okay, yes, like Shamira said, she didn't let everyone know, okay, this is what's about to happen, but she did at least let people know when they got, when people got there, she didn't pretend that they were just all her homies. I mean, to her credit, she did at least open up then as far as like, oh, hey, y'all all fucking, we're all getting it in. Was that more in your either in your experience or as far as the way that you would have handled it? Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I think being open and honest, I would rather tell people one-on-one. Because when you put people on the spot like that, again, that's a situation you cannot control. You can try to, but you can't control other people's feelings. So if one of them gets upset and wants to fight the other three, that I caused that. I incited that. And I feel like you have to be responsible. It doesn't matter if you're polyamorous, if you're a polygamist, if you're monogamous. You still have to be responsible with the people that you're dating. And that's even if you're a serial dater, a monogamous serial dater. It's like if you stop dating somebody in August and bam, you have another person that you're dating 2 weeks after you broke up with another person, you still have to be responsible with that situation if you bump into the person you just broke up with 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Like, we have to be mature about these things. So I will say that was a little immature what she did, because that situation could have gone terribly wrong. But how it was written, it was a bit fantastical. Like, I honestly don't think it would have gone that well in real life.
Especially not that dance with the weed. I've never been that high.
No.
I was like, y'all, oh my God. And JB overshoots a little two-step. I was just like, I was like, it's time to go. Like, and it came on the heels of like, I think it was that episode where like Spike had that scene of like her sitting in a chair spinning around for 3 minutes while a whole song played. Oh my God. And I was like, this episode is just like, all right, Nola, you are your own person. I get it. I guess.
Being an individual. So
I'm just like the painting part, like, not to derail a little bit, but she really was like, hey guys, happy Thanksgiving, have some pie. And like, I drew all of your dicks true to size.
And see, that's what I'm saying. In real life, one of those guys would have gotten upset, no matter the size that she painted it, and bombed on everybody.
Exactly.
I'm not doing damage control.
She got lucky. She definitely escaped unscathed. And, nobody wrecked her apartment. Nobody got crazy. Like, there would have at least been one hurt ego in there that would have at least tried to turn up, at least.
Of course.
Yeah. So, being a Black woman, dealing with body issues as a performer, or in general, of course, is a very real issue. And I saw your tweets on this as well, Shamira. And I've seen a lot of debate about how they thought the storyline was handled. But as two full-time Black women, you, of course, know that dealing with insecurities around your body, whether as a performer or in general, just out in this fuck-ass world, is a very real issue many women deal with. So the show introduces us to Shamika, who is Nola's BFF, a dancer with big booty wishes and ass implant dreams. So, dramatics and exaggerations aside, how on point was the show's depiction, in your opinion, of this trend via that storyline?
Yeah, I hated that storyline. I mean, like, the reason why I disliked it is because there were points when the writers clearly knew that, like, they should present a counterpoint, but they, like, wholly dismissed it. Like, they would say stuff like, oh, hey, well, isn't feminism loving your body and being able to have the choice to do whatever you want? And it's like, no, Harriet Tubman just shot herself from the grave. And I'm like, what? And I mean, listen, like, this is a minor point, but like, I will pretend to know the ins and outs of the butt enhancement industrial complex, but I believe that if you are of the ilk that is getting motel butt shots or whatever, like, you are not doing it the same. You're not getting a touch up the same day as a performance. It needs time to like settle. Yeah. So just things didn't add up to me. But I think the bigger thing was like the way they talked about her was like this weird, sad charity case of like self-hate, and nothing about how the character portrayed herself felt like that. Right. So like Nola's mom was like, she doesn't love herself. We've never seen her natural hair. And Nola's like, well, doesn't all our hood girls need a little bit of armor? And you're like, what? Like, she just wants to wear a weave. Or like even the way they approached the ass shots thing, which first of all, they said she had no ass, which wasn't true, but whatever.
Exaggerations. But but also in that space, I'm sure it was, that type of thing is probably much more amplified in being in the space as a dancer.
Right. And, just the way that it kind of ultimately climaxed was really ridiculous for me. Like, they really had a man with hooks sitting in the front of a burlesque show, like clearly directing it to like tantalize us as to if he was gonna poke her ass.
I knew that was coming.
I'm sitting here like, this is not happening. Like, this cannot really be happening. But like, ultimately, I didn't know what they thought they were trying to tell me, like, because it kept being like they would present like kind of a facsimile of a counterpoint, but then kind of like, well, no, that's wrong because she clearly doesn't love herself. And I'm like, but nothing about how the character's portraying herself makes that clear, except for the fact that she gets ass shots.
I saw this and it immediately reminded me of a friend of mine who has had some work done on her body. And there were so many similarities that it was almost like having a conversation of me and her filmed. Some of the same things Shamika was saying, I've heard my friends say to me. And, I don't know what wave of feminism you would say this is on, but I am of the firm belief that as a woman, my job is to support other women and their decision, their right to do whatever they want to do. So yes, we want to tell each other that, you should love yourself for exactly who you are. But I mean, this is nowhere near butt shots, but I had a bad hair day today. I hated my hair to the fullest, so much so that I was like, I want to either straighten this or shave it all off. And, true to feminism, I'm supposed to love myself no matter how I look, right? But the truth about it is there is not a woman in the world, and I know this is a generalized statement, but it's true. There's not a woman in the world that wakes up every single day and loves every single thing about herself. Even if it's like, my eyebrows look like shit today. Like, it's not self-hatred all the time,
Understood.
So the picture that some people were painting or alluding to that Spike was painting, I think sometimes it gets exaggerated because even though I love him as a writer, a director, and a producer, he does exaggerate a lot. So the booty bursting, that was kind of like him exaggerating, because I'm sorry, if your ass bursted, shouldn't you still be in the hospital like a week later? Like,
right.
That's, I mean, it was so extra at that point. But the concept of a woman wanting to modify her body to make herself happier, I'm all for cosmetic surgery. I've had a baby. Like, my kid, I had perfect breasts. And then my kid sucked the goddamn life out of them. And my shit looked like socks with golf balls now. So am I really going to be, if I'm being honest, no, I don't like how my tits look. Yes, I would like a lift. But I think in our efforts to be feminist and give each other room, like, we have to be honest too and say, well, whatever makes you happy, sis. And I think that's what Nola was doing. Like, I'm not going to judge you. You don't need it from my perspective, but fuck what I'm saying. Do what makes you feel good. And I think that part was missed a lot because of the exaggeration that was attached to it.
Right. I mean, I feel like they just had so many characters on top of it, like actively criticizing it, that it obscured whatever kind of balanced perspective Nola was trying to give. Like, all like that friend, the art director friend.
Oh, Clorinda.
Clover, I forget her name.
Clorinda, I think it was.
Clorinda. Clorinda, being like Harriet Tubman is mad, and then like her mom talking about her weave or whatever, and then just the whole discussion around. I mean, I'm guessing they chose burlesque because that's easier than a strip club. But yeah, it kind of felt like they let Nola pay lip service to what is obviously a line of thought by many of us currently in the kind of feminist sphere. But it was still kind of like, but this is the danger if you don't love yourself enough. Because if not, then why did ultimately your ass shots burst, right? Like, I was like, is this supposed to be a warning tale? Like, I guess, I'm not sure. But it just frustrated me throughout because I didn't understand what he was trying to get us to believe about whether or not Shemeka cared about herself or not.
Yeah, I wondered about that as well. I wondered how much of that. I mean, I know, women wrote it, but I wondered how much of it, in terms of how it was presented, was Spike's, Spike's eye, and of course, Spike being Spike. But with that said, he directed 8, and I think since he wrote 2 out of 10 episodes, and of course, Black women did, the rest of the writing, or the majority of the writing. Do you think that the show could have benefited from women being given the reign to direct more episodes, or were the influence of his wife, the women writers, and the Netflix executives, who I've seen a lot of the writers and showrunners say were women, of course, were they enough of a balance to Spike's shortcomings in his handlings of female characters and women's stories?
I think what I'm hearing from Shamira and people who are younger, he should have had a more diverse group of writers as far as age goes. I think he picked people that he could direct pretty well. And then, I mean, I still would have liked to see him direct the episodes, because not unless he did what Ava did with Queen Sugar, is get directors who kind of flow really well together. But I'm sure that would have taken more time to find directors who could flow with him, because we all know Spike's signature. Like, we know when we're watching something directed by him.
Very much so.
Because it's so unique, his angles and stuff. So I think if they get another season, which I'm hoping that they do, so that he can combat some of this criticism, I hope he does take the road that Ava has used with Queen Sugar, and get other women to direct the episodes and get younger writers. I still think he needs, older perspectives there too, but get a more well-rounded group.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think they have to be all head writers, obviously, but I think there's something to be said about someone sitting down and being like, a 27-year-old wouldn't say that, like a 27-year-old wouldn't do this, or, like just small things that like don't forgettably make sense in a way that don't add up. It's like, okay, so Nola, like, Clorinda got mad because Nola kept bringing people in their shared apartment, so she moved out into a whole brownstone.
She said, fuck that. What? Upgrade. She got an apartment lottery, of course.
Like, I'm sitting here like, if that's the life that people are living, like, I don't know how I did not get that same memo in Brooklyn. Nope. Like, things like that, where I'm like, just small things are like, I know it sounds nitpicky, but it's like, it, and this is another criticism I had of the show, which I don't know if Spike kind of seems split between talking about Nola's story, and you already guys know how I feel about Nola's story and the stories around it, and lamenting the end of the Fort Greene that he knew.
No, he was going to give you both.
Right. And the thing is that because he's giving us both, like even discussing present day Fort Greene, he's missing so much about that discussion that I'm here. That it's like, this is not how it works. Like, no, people don't just move into brownstones anymore. It's not the 90s or like the mid 80s where you could just get a house and share with all of your creatives and not pay $11,000 a month, because that's how much they're paying. Right.
For 17 roommates.
Exactly. Like, so I'm sitting here like just stuff like that I'm like, it doesn't really add up, but like it was just stuff like that I got stuck on, and be like, this could flow so much better if we just had like one person to come in and say, this is not how that conversation will go, right? Like, it would go more this way. As like, the topics weren't bad. Like, I thought the topics were relevant. we do talk about street harassment. We do talk about body modification, even if it's in more positive terms than negative terms. And we do constantly talk about gentrification, right? Mm-hmm. But the way that the conversations flowed, I've been to Brooklyn board meetings. Like, none of those old ass Black women in 4th grade at Clinton Hill are getting up and offering a potluck. Like, let me tell you, like, they're not. They are mad. They're sitting there. They've been there since the 60s. They're passing that house down to their kids. And they're like, we don't want none of these white people here, Real. So just the way, like, it just felt like part of it was him reconciling the Fort Greene he knew with what is now and missing some of it, because even though he still technically has a place in Brooklyn, it's just not his lived experience to be in the social scene. So that's why I kind of emphasize the age thing, not because I think that people can't write about perspectives they don't know. There's obviously great work done by people who wrote perspectives outside of themselves, but more so that there's something to be said about kind of like a top line editor saying, hey, we just don't talk like this, or, we would just text this. This wouldn't be a phone conversation, or like things like that would make it feel smoother while still hitting the notes you wanted to hit. Because instead I got stuck on just stilted levels of conversation that was like, no one sits down at brunch just to have this conversation specifically.
Real.
You know what it felt like? He took She's Gotta Have It from 31 years ago and made it with people of today.
Right.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And while that's great for me, that's not going to hit the mark for our new audience, because I swear to you guys, I read at least 10 posts that was like, 15 minutes in, I turned this shit off because it was boring. And I was just like,
I have a lot of friends that were like, fuck this shit. I'm making it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was hard. People were like, it was a chore.
It wasn't a chore to me because the episodes were relatively short. But for me, it really did feel like I was just watching a car crash in slow motion. And it's not because I dislike Spike. I just felt so stilted to me that I'm like, these are things that I don't know why they're happening. Like, and I would get and part of it, I guess, is also my New York myopia, where I would get so caught up in things that just don't make sense. I'm like, she went to Woodlawn Cemetery to lay around and roll around graves. Woodlawn is like really fucking far.
It's the end of the world.
Fort Greene. That's taking the 4 train from Barclays to the other end of the line. That's like going from like Central LA out to Long Beach just to like go hang out for like something. Like, I just was sitting there like, why is this happening? Just so she could take pictures next to Celia Cruz. And it was for like 4 minutes. And I was really perplexed.
It was Spike being Spike and doing having his theatrical flair. And, just homage to just the Blackness and Brooklyn of yesteryear, and paying homage to himself as well, taking nods from his own past work. So, shit, if you've been in the game 30 years, you can sample yourself. I figure that's a win.
Right. Yeah. That's great.
In terms of, we're in a better place now than we were, of course, in 2000, 2006 and, of course, 1986, in terms of the amount and the variety of Black content that we have to choose from. Do you feel that our judgment of this series, our view, or any, our discussions are at all influenced by what is still a relatively small pool of like Black as fuck options? Because, mainstream quote unquote shows can piss off 2 seasons of fuckery and get renewed and keep coming back, with mediocrity, and like we don't get a lot of those same choices to have crappy shows and keep coming back, and know you're going to keep getting funded. So
right, and I agree with you. I defend Black creatives' a right to be aggressively mediocre. Like, I think that should be a thing. And I think sometimes that we feel pressured to feel like we have to defend things, even their glaring gaps, because we feel like we're not allowed to be mediocre. Like, I don't think She's Gotta Have It shouldn't have another season. I just don't aggressively care if it has another season or not, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So if it has another season, I'll probably check it out. It's fine. But I think that where we get so nervous, and understandably so, about explaining are issues with things, because it really does feel like there's a finite pool of art that they're going to be able to choose to say, this is what we champion now. And we don't want to publicly admit things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that, because it's like 500 Black people could say the show How I Met Your Mother is trash and it's going to get another season. I don't even know if this shit is still in the air, but if it was, it would still get another season, because you have so many other white people who are watching it. Whereas if 500 people say She's Gotta Have It is trash and the shit was fucking boring and I never want to see that shit again, they're going to say, well, shit, your own people don't even like it, so we're not going to give you another season. So it does put us under a very unfair microscope, where it's like, okay, we have to hit all the right points so that we can get another season. I mean, and it doesn't start there. It starts at the pilot. Like, okay, we have to make sure this pilot is dope as fuck so that we can get a full season. So, I mean, with him being a seasoned veteran, it's not beneath Spike to be like, well, fuck you. You don't want to do it. I'm going to pay for it myself. But that's not every Black creative. Like, we don't have the funds to do that.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
wow.
What happened to Underground?
Exactly. And that show was good as fuck.
Amazing.
So it's like, do we honestly critique each other? Like, okay, Spike, you definitely could have done better here. Or do we wait until that second season comes out and say, okay, so this is what we didn't like about your shit. Make sure that third season is phenomenal. It's like a constant juggling act. And I hate it for the viewers, because I do like to hear people's constructive criticism of the show beyond only watching 10 minutes and saying the entire 10 episodes were trash. But
the whole thing is some bullshit.
Right. I think these perspectives are important. And as a future television/film writer myself, I pay attention to these things, because we're tough on each other.
Ooh,
so
we are.
I think it's
like, I saw somebody comment on Twitter like not too long ago, like, I don't know what's going to happen if Black Panther doesn't turn out to be as excellent as we want it to be.
Can you imagine?
As much as I want to go see that with a group of people, I feel like I need to go Saturday morning with my daughter and be like, let's enjoy this before everyone tears it to pieces.
Right. No,
That's
I
scary.
get that. I'm definitely going to have to watch it twice anyway, because I'm going to watch it once at Magic Johnson, and I'm definitely not going to be able to hear anything because niggas are yelling at the screen. I had to watch Get Out twice for that same reason. Niggas was yelling at the screen. I couldn't hear half the words.
That's part of the experience.
Exactly. And then I'll watch the second time during the matinee screening.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank you both for joining us here. Where can the lovely, well-moisturized folks stalk you and find out more about your awesomeness? Shamira.
Well, I would say VSB, but I haven't written a little bit, and I hope Damon doesn't hear this before he kills me. But you can follow me on Twitter at _shamgod with 1 M. And I have my website where I curate any new content I put at shamirathefirst.com. Generally, like Alex already mentioned, I contribute to VSB, New York Mag's The Cut, and Washington Post from time to time. So I'll definitely promote content as I put it out.
Boom. And Madam CJ Walker.
I can be found on Twitter with The Purple Onion. The is spelled THEE. And same for Instagram. If you want to see me fawn over my child from time to time. And I post here and there on the Extraordinary Negroes. I also have some other websites, but you'll find those if you follow me on Twitter.
So go stalk both of these wonderful ladies. Be sure to listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn, Mixcloud, wherever you consume your podcast. Hit us up at theextraordinarynegroes.com. Also, The Extra Negroes on both Twitter and Instagram. And The Extraordinary Negroes on Facebook. Be sure to moisturize those ankles and those elbows before you walk out the house. And eat something semi-healthy if you can. But also make sure you eat some banana pudding as well. And stay wonderful. Peace out. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Later.